So I made a video on contemplation and how I do it. But what I wanted to do with this video is share with you a contemplation that I've done recently and kind of show how something that seems, a belief that we have that seems to be so true, kind of falls apart when we go into it. And so how important it is to question things like that. So actually this started when I was watching an episode of Star Trek Next Generation. This is one of my favorite shows, and I've watched the episodes many, many times. Now, in this episode, the Counselor Troy, loses her ability to sense what other people think and feel. And we basically see her fall apart and become kind of like a child. And people try to console her and try to help her, and she just is terrible. And so I noticed that her being a counselor, so what she was saying when everything was okay, and then what she was doing when things were bad for her, kind of show that, well, what she actually is saying when things are good doesn't hold much weight. So I just started to think about this. And this is a belief that I have too, that we really see the true person when times are tough. Now, this is a common belief. And we can see many examples, and I'm sure you believe this too. Common example is you see this with sports teams where everyone's happy when everything's going well, but when they start losing, then you see what the true character of the person. So I've had this belief perhaps all my life. And this belief has had an effect on me because there's someone in my life that does not act well when times are tough. And so I always thought, okay, this is the true personality of the person. This is what they actually are. And so that has an effect. That makes me look differently at this person, going that this person is actually negative. But I decided to just ask. Because now there was a little bit of space where I could ask that question and say, is this true? Okay, why is someone more themselves when times are bad? Now, just looking at it, I think about this. Okay, times are good, times are bad. Why is this more real? Well, looking at that, it doesn't make any sense. Why would it be? If you have a negative, well, I guess if you have a negative idea of the world, then maybe that's better. But if you don't, it doesn't make any sense. Why would that one be better? So why do I believe that? There has to be something to it. Okay, so I looked into it. Now, the thing is, I noticed, like the Counselor Troy example, she was saying things when everything was good, and she's telling people what to do. But when things were bad for her, and those people were saying things, the same things back to her, she wouldn't accept any of it. So we see that what she was saying when times were good, again, doesn't hold much weight because it falls apart when times are bad for her. Okay, so we see this as hypocrisy. And we'll see this all the time in politics. When the other side does it, it's bad. When we do it, it's okay. You see this with people who for free speech. Our side should have free speech and always be, that's the most important thing when we're being attacked. But when the other side is saying something you don't like, well, then now we got to kind of clamp down and, try to be safe. So we see that is negative, being a hypocrite. Okay, so that's true. Now, the opposite is when someone says something and in good times, and they also say it in bad times, okay, we think of that person as stronger. Or well, at least we can say that that belief is strong. We know it has a solid foundation for that person. And that's a good thing. We can also see that people who do very good things at times that are bad, we respect that. We have the story of the hero. That's why we have war heroes. And we can see people who do these extraordinary things, saving people around them. And we say, okay, that's the true person. Well, that is a good trait. Is that the true person? Now, what about someone who it's not about what they say? So times are good, they're like this. Times are bad, they're like this. And it's different. But they're not saying one thing and then switching to something the opposite when times are bad. The person that I know is like this. Okay, why is this the negative more of that person, more real? It's not. Okay, so how can I and how can I make this work? How can I make all these pieces together to make sense? Well, what I can see is that what we're actually seeing is traits that we appreciate. So when someone says something good times to something, it's the same thing in bad times, we like that. We know that that's solid foundation, that we can believe that about them. Now, it might be just about this. So it might be about free speech, but other things, they might switch. So maybe they're strong on crime, but then when it's against them, they want to be a lot softer or whatever. Now, we might take that trait and project it out and say that's what the person is, but it's just the trait. So, person does good things in bad times, we can respect that. Someone who doesn't change, we can respect that. But neither of these things are more the person. Now, what we can see though is that this trait is, if someone doesn't change, we can say that's a solid trait of that person. So, again, we can kind of see that that is a real person. We can see we're being allowed a window into what the real person is. But that doesn't say anything else about the person. It just talks about, we know that trait is part of the personality. So, to make sense of everything then, instead of saying that that's the negative is the true self, what I can say is, this person, one of the traits they have is they don't deal with adversity well. When times are tough, they don't deal with it, or they deal with it poorly. That's it. It doesn't say anything other than that. That's one of their flaws, is that they don't deal with adversity well. That's not more them, the negative than the positive. It's just that's a part of them. They don't deal with adversity well. Now, this changes. Again, this changes instantly how I feel about the person. Because now I was saying that this person's true personality is what happens when times are bad. Now I see that's not the case. Just this person does not deal with adversity well. That's the truth of the situation. And so that lifts off a lot of negativity that I had. Just like that. Just one episode of Star Trek, asking a question and going into it. A question that seems so obvious. And seeing that most of it is true. But it's taking what is true and kind of expanding it out to kind of a realm that is not. And when you look into it, you can see that and you can separate those two. And you can still respect people like that. But also understand that when people are bad in bad situations, that's all it says about them. It's just they can't handle it well. They don't deal with it well. And even with that, when you see that, you can help someone to learn to deal with it better, as opposed to saying that that's their true self. All right. So I'd like to know what you think. Any comments? Put them in the comment section below. Thank you. Until next time.